Agreed to. I call the member for North Sydney.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise in support of the amendments just moved by the honourable member for Indi, because actually, when it is all said and done, I think she has really hit the mark when it comes to the heart of what is the key issue here. People like myself have copped a lot of criticism in this parliament because of the amount that was spent to see the seat of North Sydney turn independent. Now, in part, that's because there is no doubt about how much money was spent in North Sydney. The seat is fully accounted for in terms of what was invested. We do not, even under the current system, have the same line of sight when it comes to the major parties. We do not know what the major parties spent in McNamara to win McNamara. We do not know what the major parties spent in Bradfield to win Bradfield. All we know is the combined campaign spending. And I actually find it pretty extraordinary that when you go to look at the returns during the 2022 election year, there are members currently sitting in seats in this House that have a 0 next to their name in terms of how much money was spent in their electorate during the 2022 election. How does that work? How does that work? And so I think what we've seen in what the member for Indi has brought forward here is a complete acknowledgement. Very happy to see expenditure caps introduced, as long as the expenditure caps are the same for everyone, and that the transparency around that expenditure is the same for everyone. So I really thank the member for Indi for continuing this fight. I think she's very clearly articulated the upside of looking at this piece of legislation through what she's proposing, and I really would welcome the government seriously considering this amendment as a true show of faith that they are looking to create an equal playing field, not just embed a political duopoly.
Member be agreed to. I call the member for North Sydney.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise again in support of the amendment moved by the member for Indi, and I've just got to say, how sensible is the member for Indi and her team in terms of how they approach not only this piece of legislation but every piece of legislation that we see come into the House. I think there are very few members in this House that have a higher level of integrity than the member for Indi. So when you hear the member for Indi suggest that the best way for a piece of legislation to be scrutinised is by an independent parliamentary committee, you can actually pretty much guarantee that she knows what she's talking about. This is a member that has been involved in developing bodies like the National Anti-Corruption Commission. This is a member who has argued since she joined Parliament for increased levels of integrity in this place. But for those who are at home wondering why you wouldn't just go to a standing committee, a joint standing committee on electoral review, I just want to explain to people the structure of parliamentary joint committees in this place. So what usually happens in a parliamentary joint committee is that the party who is of government of the day dominates the committee. They have the most numbers on the committee. And in fact, in every committee in this place, bar one, and that is actually the National Anti-Corruption Committee, Parliamentary Joint Committee, the committee will be chaired by a member of the government of the day, and the deputy chair will be from the opposition of the day. Now, in the case of the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Reform, which is a great committee, I think we should have it, we should be very transparent around it, the truth of the matter is it was originally tasked with looking at the results of the 2022 election, an election which created the largest crossbench in the history of Australian Parliament. It has the largest number of independents sitting in it in the history of Australian Parliament. Yet, interestingly, playing along at home, there wasn't an independent on that committee. No, not until Kate joined, the member for Curtin, joined the committee on the last hearing day. So for all of the hearings prior to that, there was not a person of an independent political persuasion involved in the assessment. And in fact, when the report was tabled by what we call JSCEM, the member for Curtin, the only independent member of that committee, lodged a dissenting report. And she provided commentary around where she felt things were heading in the right direction and where things can be improved. Now, in an environment where we do the best we can in this place, and I believe everybody comes to the questions we have in absolute good faith, the truth of the matter is when we are looking at something as important as this, we should be able to delegate to an independent statutory review. And that's where the member for Indi has nailed this recommended amendment to the government. At the end of the day, this legislation has not had a lot of light during this debating process. If we could go back to our communities and say, if nothing more, at least we know in 12 months it will be independently reviewed, then I think the Australian public could take some faith that there will be somebody other than the major parties looking at how this is functioning.